Hey all, John here. Today we're going to be reviewing the Google Pixel 7 Pro. This is going to be more of a late review. I've owned the device for about 3 months now. Paid full price through my carrier because I was switching. I'm actually coming from the S23 Ultra before because I was having battery life issues. So in this video I'm going to show you my thoughts about what I think about the phone and we'll go from there. The first note I'll make is that I don't think people buy Pixel phones for the specifications. They buy them because they're basically simple Android phones. They're not priced too high. They're usually cheaper than the competition. So let's say people are switching from, let's say, an iPhone, they're tired of paying iPhone prices, they might switch to the Pixel 7a or like the standard Pixel 7 because they can pay that price out of pocket and they'll do everything a phone wants them to do. Pixel phones aren't known for their specs, they're basically known for their camera and not much else. Yes, they're great devices. They have things like call screening, the always on now playing, stuff like that, but they are as basic as you can get. They are the iPhone of the Android market, that's what I would say. Anyways, we'll talk about specs briefly on mine. So I have a Pixel 7 Pro. I'm looking at a Tensor G2, 12 gigs of RAM on it, which is still way too much for a phone, but in the Android world, it's always better to have more RAM than less, right? I have 256 gigs of storage, and of course it has a 1440p display that runs at 120 hertz. Now that 120 hertz screen, we're going to talk about it because there's some issues with it in my personal opinion, but at least you have the baseline of what the phone has. As far as software and your day-to-day stuff goes, I'll tell you that the Pixel is basically the iPhone of the Android world. You are basically getting AOSP with some minimal features added on top by Google. You have features like call screening, the always-on Shazam, which we call now playing. You have the photo on blurb. Honestly, that can be on any phone you like. There is voice recording that basically will transcribe everything for you. There's some cool live caption features, but those have been expanded to other Android devices. And there's some other stuff that I'll list, but those are the main ones that come to mind. Now, the main feature of the Pixel, the camera. I honestly don't use it, so I don't have much to report about it. I can just tell you it works, but there are times it takes time to process photos because it's all about AI photography, right? I prefer to actually just use my A7 IV to take photos. Not that I carry it everywhere, but if I want to take actual photos, I will bring my A7 IV along and just use that. I just don't trust smartphone cameras, but the Pixel camera has been pretty good. No issues other than the fact when you're recording video, I've noticed that there's a bit of a stutter. So that's probably a problem with that tensor chip. It's based on the Sony Exynos line, or whatever you want to call it. So in the first 3 seconds of a clip, sometimes there's a lot of stutter, but I think that relates to the overheating problems I've been having. So I'll dive into that as well. The overheating problem on the Pixel 7 is Pixel 7 line. I'm sure it affects the 7a, the standard 7, and of course the Pro that I have. So when that starts happening, I have noticed that my refresh rate actually drops down to 60 hertz or lower. And then whenever I'm doing stuff on the phone will start to almost glitch out. And especially during video, let's say you're starting a video recording, the phone will actually stutter consistently in the first like 3 to 5 seconds when you're recording. And then sometimes it irons itself out, sometimes it doesn't, but for the most part, that's been fairly consistent. I actually used to run with my phone in my pocket. So I try to use my phone for Google Maps just so I can navigate, stuff like that. And my screen would just be so dim. It's supposed to be a bright screen, right? But of course, the phone thinks it's overheating. And another thing I've noticed is that when I'm driving with my phone mounted on my dashboard, so basically I blast my AC, funny enough, I do blast my AC into my phone to try and cool it down. But even though I do that, Google Maps will display a warning message saying that it's switching to dark mode because of the overheating problem. If I do get a screenshot of this, I'll attach it as an overlay. But that's just the baseline of what my day-to-day and software looks like. So it's a great phone. Software is not really bloated at all. You have all the essentials you need. You can download apps for everything else. But Pixel phones have always been known to be riddled with bugs, at least with the Pixel 6 and 7 line. I actually owned a Pixel 6 and I had similar problems, so I can say that. Now, another thing that I have to talk about, I'm not the only one that has problems with this, but the modem in the Exynos chip, that is basically what the Tensor is based on, has a lot of problems compared to the Qualcomm modems that you would find in something like a OnePlus 11 or an S23 Ultra. So I actually did a comparison side by side of modem signal and speed tests. So I actually moved my SIM card from the Pixel 7 Pro into an S23 Ultra and then did speed tests independent of each other. So put the SIM card in the Pixel 7, did a speed test, screenshotted the signal strength, and then moved the SIM into the S23 Ultra, checked the signal strength, did a speed test and tested them on both 5G, T-Mobile calls it ultra capacity, or you would call it ultra wideband for all the normal folks out there, and also an LTE. Just compared both of the speeds. I'll see if I can attach it as an overlay, but it's pretty bad. I don't know what's going on. For the most part, I can say that Verizon, that's what Xfinity Mobile runs on, has had a lot of issues in my specific area. So I would just say, if you're looking at this phone, make sure that your towers, and most people will not know this, but just make sure your signal is really good in your area, because if it's not, you're just going to struggle. When I did eventually switch to the T-Mobile network, I noticed that the modem performance got a lot better, but again, based on your towers, just make sure if you are considering this phone that you have really good signal. If you don't, it's the Pixel is just going to make it worse for you. Battery performance. Now, this one honestly is going to be a mixed bag. My standby time, I hate to say this, but it's garbage. Overnight, I lose 10% of battery, not doing anything. The phone just sleeping on the screen down, loses 10%. I don't know why, it just happens. I did some screenshots through the settings app just so you can see my battery performance, and also downloaded AccuBattery over the time I've owned the phone just so I can track usage. I think it's calculating 16 hours of usage, and I honestly, before this video, I think I drained the phone from 100% down to 40 within a couple hours. I'll attach that as well. It's embarrassing. I wasn't doing anything on the phone other than, of course, just streaming video and scrolling through Facebook, so you would think that's a low power activity. I don't play games on my phone, so why would the battery want to drain that fast? No idea, but I think the adaptive brightness could be the culprit. And of course, the tensor chip is probably running on some older technology. It's just behind compared to, like, let's say the S23 Ultra and the OnePlus 11 that have newer Qualcomm chipsets that sip power. It's the same way how on the PC side, we have Intel chips that drain watching, let's say, YouTube videos compared to Apple's M1 chips. That's something I have noticed ever since I have left the Apple ecosystem. Quality on the other side just seems worse overall. Apple is, I'm not going to say perfected everything, but their chips are basically where they need to be. Talking more about software, another thing on the Pixels is that, again, since you are on the de facto Android device, you will get all the AOSP updates first for, I think, the first 3 years, and then you get 5 years of security updates. Honestly, that doesn't mean much to me anymore, because other brands will get features way before AOSP does. So it's like, so what? It's cool, at least you get updates, but that's not anything special anymore. Circling back to bugs, another thing that I've noticed that is fairly major for me, other than, of course, overheating, is the fact that if I'm going into the multitasking menu, so I'll probably attach a screen recording of me doing this. If I go into my recents, my multitasking queue, I noticed that it'll say there's no apps, even though I opened, let's say, my Tesla app, I opened that up and then closed it, and it's like, it doesn't pop up. It just, no matter what, I've rebooted my phone. I'm not going to factory reset my phone just to fix the problem, so that's not happening. I switched back to the standard Pixel launcher because I use Nova launcher as my main, and still it just does not work. So that is something that definitely hasn't been fixed. I am not on any Android beta, I'm just on the standard release. I have not modified anything on my phone, so there's definitely something going on there. It's a small annoyance, but it does get fairly annoying. You would expect to be able to switch from your email app to the phone app without having to go back to your launcher. So there is that. But overall, this phone, it's going to be a tough one. I thought switching to a Pixel 7 Pro would mean that I would get updates first, I would have a smoother phone. You would think it's basically the iPhone of Android, right? It's going to have a great experience. And it is. Overall, it's a good phone. You have things like call screening, which I'll see if I can touch an overlay of that. Basically, your phone will pick up calls for you. If it thinks it's spam, it'll talk to the person and then relay that message over to you and records it. It does all of that for you. There's stuff like photo and blur, but honestly, I don't really care about that, because if you take a photo, I like to take photos once and then present that, maybe do some slight edits, nothing much. So it works when it's there. If you want to use it, great. The recorder feature is kind of cool. The now playing is probably my favorite feature. I'll probably throw an overlay. It just basically listens all the time when your screen is off and then tells you, hey, this song was playing, do you like it? And then you can throw on your Spotify or whatever streaming service you have. But again, things like battery life and overheating kind of just destroy the phone. On top of that, you have the modem performance. It's like the phone can work, but if let's say you're paying for the phone outright, you're paying full price for the phone, you don't want the phone to have terrible signal, modem problems randomly. There was a time when I was on the Verizon network using Xfinity Mobile. I'd be driving through downtown and call would drop. I'm like, this is garbage. You buy a phone to use it as a phone and then do everything else on top of it, don't you? So if it can't do basically the bare minimum, why keep it around? For me, it's like I got the phone on contract with Xfinity and paid it off and canceled my service because of this. I thought it was the service, but then I realized it was the phone. So I canceled my service. I'm going to be switching back to the 23 Ultra, but if you're buying this phone, I recommend you only buy it used or refurbished for probably $550 or less. If you're buying the Pro, if you're buying the standard 7 or a 7A, probably be a lot cheaper than that, but I don't recommend buying this phone new. It's simply an embarrassment. You would think that the phone's been out for more than 6 months. Everything is fixed and patched up by now, but from what I'm hearing, also with the future, the Pixel 8 will be using a similar Exynos chip, even though they might call that Tensor G3, but it's based on the same stuff. I think it's time that Google switches to, let's say, Qualcomm, and then works with them to set up a chip instead of creating their own silicon. I get it, it's the early stages. Apple has their own silicon, you want to do your own stuff, that's great, but this is not ready to ship. For the people that have the Pixel 7 Pro and they love it, great, but I know I'm not the only one having a tough experience, especially with the modem overheating and the screen dimming so much to the point where I can't even use it. So I'll say that the phone is worth like $550 max. If you're buying a Pro model, if you're paying any more than that, just buy a different phone. Wait until Google fixes their problems and then maybe consider it. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for the next one.